Hey folks, and thank you for coming back to join in for the third part of the lesson, which is 3-point perspective. If you haven't watched the other videos, I suggest going back, watching 1-point and 2-point perspective to get a feel so that this lesson makes a ton more sense for you. I'll link those in the description below, and I'll try to leave them at the end of the video so you can just click right on them. I'm not sure if that stuff is working these days with YouTube. So, we're looking at something we recognize here, yes. This is kind of the setup for a 2-point perspective with a level horizontal line as our eye line, okay? Like the last video and the video before, 1 and 2 perspective, I did a top-down perspective view on the subject, which was a rectangular box. We're going to draw that again today. I've already formed in a graph, so I won't have to drag you through drawing that today. Today's lesson is introducing the third point of perspective. Where would you think it is, right? Where else could it be? You've got 1, you've got 2. Well, it's down here in this case. So, let me explain that for you. What I'm using this third point of perspective for, that we did not use in 2-point and that we did not use in 1-point, is to suggest foreshortening with our vertical lines. So, in the instance of drawing a rectangular box, I've already provided a grid here to build the shape within. But I'm going to show you how this would work. So, just going to create a new layer here. You've got a point at the bottom of the page here, alright? And this point, if you were to draw a straight line up to your horizontal line, you'd find in this instance it's a little off center, right? Center's right about here in our panel, and the center, or excuse me, the third point that we've chosen is just off center. This is going to, from this distance, okay, I'm going to try to explain this best I can. From this distance, where our subject is going to be, which is going to be roughly right in here, the distance of this third point being so far away from the subject is going to allow the vertical lines, okay, this line, to foreshorten and taper down to that vanishing point in a natural way. The same way your 1 and 2-point perspectives vanish nice and smoothly off the page, not dramatically, right? And I stressed that in the last video in 2-point perspective, that keeping our perspective points off of the page is going to give a more realistic 3D setting to draw within. With the third point, don't be afraid to really take it far off of the page, okay? Allow me to digress a little further. In the instance where you're drawing a comic book and you have an long panel, such as this one we're using as an example, you're going to want to pick a spot about this far off of the panel to plot your third point in order to give your lines more of a natural look, okay? I think the easiest way to think about it is know what you want your subject matter to be, and when you figure it out in 2-point perspective and how it should fit, as long as it doesn't look wonky, you can, from that point, pick where you safely want the third point to be, right? Because the third point, I hate to digress again, but the third point could be anywhere along this horizontal line. But you gotta know that every time you change that third point, that now your horizontal lines are drastically going to change, right? Do you see that? And it changes the entire dynamic of what that shape is doing, right? And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but then you will reach a point where something just doesn't look right. And I think that right there is the example I'm trying to make. I don't like that. I don't think anybody likes that. Unless you could butt it up with all the buildings and everything else, or other shapes to make that read perfectly, I wouldn't do that. I would stick with our original composition. So let me get back to it. Let's get back to the box, okay? So, again, using my 2-point perspective grid, I'm just finding the shape of the rectangle that I want. I hope you all can see exactly what I'm doing. Boom. Right? And then boom. And then boom. Alright? Those aren't straight up and down vertical lines anymore, are they? They're tapering right down to that third point, right off the page. Okay? Same with this corner right here. Tapers right down to here. Let's see what that looks like. You know? Looks good. As you can see, it looks pretty natural. The way it's just sitting there in space. Kind of how it might look if you and I were both looking at it, you know, 12 feet away from us. Like it's a trunk on the floor, a rectangular trunk on the floor, you know, that has maybe, I don't know, 1.5 feet off the floor. So let me take away some of that sketches, and look at the box. Looks pretty cool, right? Now let's try to apply this to something else. I did another drawing here earlier. Alright, so let's take a look at this building I've kind of sketched out for us here. Alright. Do we all understand what's happening? As you can see in the diagram here, we've got our grid set up. We've got our 3 points of perspective set up. The third point of perspective that I've chosen here, it fits nicely with the building and the angle I've chose for you to view it at. This way we get to see a bit of the would-be roof. You can see the sides of the building where it meets the street. I don't want to confuse you too much, but even the, let's say you want to get kind of crazy here. I know this tree trunk is going to be kind of an organic shape, but assuming it grows straight up like our building is, I'm actually going to follow that third point of perspective as it tapers down to the ground and do some foreshortening a little bit on the tree. And that should actually help to guide the eye to follow how the perspective is going, okay? Which is this way, right? And now that you have this idea of how it's sitting there below the horizon line, once you draw in other things, they have to adhere to the same perspective. I don't want to get too much into construction in these 3 videos. Obviously, I haven't gone too far into it, just because I don't want to overcomplicate the initial fundamentals in the lesson itself. All three of these perspective videos have been looking down at the subject that we've been drawing. You know, this, I haven't even taken the perspective above the horizon line yet, which in the next video I'll illustrate everything for you. 1 point, 2 point, 3 point above the horizon line, just to show you what those shapes look like from what we call a worm's eye view. You may have heard of that. For now, you have 1, 2, and now 3 point perspective. This is essentially how it works and how shapes contort and move in that 3D setting. Like I said, this one is enough that you don't need me to overload your plate with information with how it's practical beyond, let's say, drawing a building. Okay, you still need to find out center points of all these sides in order to scale things. All this stuff I will teach you in videos to come. For now, just start playing with the boxes and the rectangles and the shapes I've shown you, and get your hand comfortable. Get your hand comfortable drawing this stuff, okay? When I come back next week, I'll have an overview a little longer, kind of encasing 1, 2, and 3. I will make some practical examples. I'll do 3 for each, and then we can start getting into some real fun stuff, like drawing the figure, like drawing backgrounds. Okay? If you have not subscribed, please do, and make sure you like and comment on the videos so I can see what you have to say and we can interact with each other. Don't be afraid to get at me at my other social media platforms. Don't forget to get at me at my social media outlets right here, okay? I'm posting new stuff all the time. You can DM me there if you want. I'd be interested in getting portfolios so I can do reviews and critiques for anybody who wants their stuff reviewed or critiqued. Thank you for stopping in. I appreciate your time. I'll be back soon with more. Have a good day.